So thanks to all of you for joining me this morning. I have the greatest personal and professional regard for the United States Conference of Mayors. And as you know, in Congress, there's a very small alumni association. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we had to make immediate decisions along the way that, as you might expect, did not always receive a chorus of support from the citizenry. And I also I look back at the days of being mayor of Springfield, which at the time was the 100th largest city in the country. And I do feel a great sense of personal and professional satisfaction from what we were able to do and the immediacy of it. So I also would just start with one very funny story because you've all had this same experience. I was in the office one Saturday morning, so I always thought it was a good time to get things done, sign letters, do some reviews, but it wasn't somebody rushing in, staffers, and it wasn't somebody that insisted on talking to you at the moment. And the phone just rang. And, I was maybe 32, I think, at the time, and I was pretty full of myself. And I answered the phone immediately. And it was a citizen, and she said to me she was really upset that the city's trash collectors had gone by her house and they had skipped picking up her trash, and that she was just outraged. And I said, well, I want to tell you, I said, I'm going to get on the phone right now and that trash will be picked up this morning. I guarantee you. So I called over to the city's trash disposal site, the wastewater treatment facility and all. And I said, good morning, this is the mayor. And the fellow answered it and he said, so am I. In a state of profound disbelief. You've all had that experience. So I do, I've always thought that there's a great element of advocacy that I have in my heart for what it is that you do every day. Again, because oftentimes you're confronted with an immediate challenge and you don't get to give esoteric answers. So let me begin by talking about just where we find ourselves. And I'll give you a little bit of background on the decision making. I helped draft much of the legislation with the speaker and others. And if I think there's some patience, the Paycheck Protection Act is working. It'll get better every day. I understand clearly the challenges that it has led to. The system has been overwhelmed, and that's the point. But there have been almost 2 million loans that have been acknowledged and granted already, and I suspect we'll be back for more. The decision was made, as you know, on the front lines of getting cash into the hands of the citizenry immediately for two reasons. One, to create demand, but also to provide people with the daily sustenance who oftentimes reside in your communities. And I expect that we are likely to revisit that again as well. The next round of allocation from Washington, which we've been working on now since before phase 3.5 even passed, as we proceed to phase 4. And you should know, I've had a good working relationship with Secretary Mnuchin. The Ways and Means Committee oversees the Treasury. We helped oversee HHS and the Labor Department as well. And so I've established a good working relationship over the many months with the individuals who are in the Secretariat. But as we proceed to the next round, it's going to involve advocacy on behalf of the state and local government. And we are going to insist on our side that this package include direct assistance to all of you. And I hope that we can use CDBG guidelines, or I hope that I've even suggested you should know that we contemplate returning to a grand initiative that fell by the wayside in the mid 80s called revenue sharing to help you with getting through these challenging moments. It is nonsensical to consider that at a time when we're going to need police and fire and healthcare workers and those on the front lines, that because you have to meet statutory guidelines as to budgetary matters, that you will be simultaneously sending out layoff notices. So we hope that this will assist not only the frontliners, but also our school systems, and being well aware of that as we go forward. So I hope that the U.S. conference will weigh in. You're likely to see the details of what we propose in the next few days, certainly within the next week. And I hope that the conference will be supportive of it. In Massachusetts, Governor Baker, who we work closely with, he is on board. So you can see that this does not, we don't want this to become one of those contentious moments. But I will say this to you with some hope, even though there is the incendiary debate that is now more a part of congressional life. It didn't exist, by the way, when I went there. There were deeply held feelings, but there wasn't the kind of that incendiary use of rhetoric all of the time. But even though you've heard some of the back and forth, remember this, these pieces of legislation to this moment in the Senate, unanimously, they passed. And in the House, almost unanimously. And in the last round, the vote was 388 to 5. So there's a broad-based core of support for the issues that you have to implement every day. And I'm grateful for your work. And again, at some point, you'll join the very small alumni association called Former Mayors, but it will be with, I think, this distinct notion of what you accomplished during your time. So let me, at this time, first go to Mayor Nan Whaley of Dayton. And by the way, I've been to every one of your communities.
Oh, great.
Times, and I'm very impressed. I've seen them all. And again, always glad to champion your issues. So, Madam Mayor, perhaps you would proceed with opening remarks.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Neal, for this opportunity. And we always love the chance to get to talk to people that understand what we're going through. And the small group of former mayors that do that work, have done that work, it makes a big difference. So thank you for this opportunity. 2019 was a very hard year for Dayton. Our city was rocked by a series of completely unexpected events. A KKK rally, a series of mass tornadoes, and a mass shooting that claimed 9 lives. As devastating as these events were for our community, they also held real financial consequences and caused us to dip into our reserves to make up for the unexpected expenses. Now, while 2019 in Dayton was certainly an anomaly, it can also serve as a microcosm of what nearly every city in the country is going through today. Mayors must both try to lead their community through difficult and sometimes tragic times, while also making sure there are sufficient resources to do the basic business of local government, picking up the trash, responding to medical emergencies, and keeping the economy moving. Dayton, like all major Ohio cities, is funded primarily by municipal income taxes. As you can imagine, that means our revenues will feel an almost immediate hit by the necessary closing of many businesses. And due to our unique revenue structure, a study by the Brookings Institution found that 4 out of the 5 top cities that will feel the greatest financial hit due to coronavirus are here in Ohio. Unemployment claims in Montgomery County, where my city is located, skyrocketed from 250 weekly claims in early March to over 12,000 just 2 weeks later. Each one of these claims represents incredible anxiety and real financial hardship for a family or an individual. It also represents a hit to the city of Dayton's ability to maintain essential services that we provide to our residents. I am so grateful for the swift action Congress has taken to try to ensure that Americans losing their jobs are not left without any options. Congress also acted to allow some cities to recover their unexpected costs related to COVID-19. Unfortunately, smaller cities like Dayton were left out and must rely on the goodwill of their governors and state legislatures to receive any money. And yet the restrictions on the CARES dollars also mean that even if this money makes it to us, we will not be able to use it to plug the holes in our budget caused by revenue loss. Because of this, we have already made a series of tough choices. We have furloughed about a quarter of our workforce, slimming down to just essential services. We have instituted a hiring freeze and put off planned capital projects, but we know even this may not be enough without more help. Because of that, we've asked our department directors to model what an 18% cut to their budgets would look like. And there is no way that we can cut that deeply without impacting essential services like police and fire. Mid-sized cities in the middle of the country were hit especially hard in the last economic downturn. Dayton lost tens of thousands of jobs in the lead up to and during the Great Recession. We trimmed our city organization to the bone then, and quite frankly, we still have not had enough resources to give every neighborhood the attention it desperately deserves. Voters passed an income tax increase in 2016 that helped improve the quality of our basic services. Due to that and smart financial management, we have been able to improve quality of life for our residents over time. Just last year, we brought back curbside leaf pickup for the first time since the Great Recession. I hate to think that we may be back in that place yet again. Cities like ours are on the front line of the fight against COVID-19, struggling to keep people safe and provide vital services. But we simply can't do it alone. We need federal support both to deal with the current crisis and to make sure we can recover from it. Folks in Dayton, regardless of what they look like or what neighborhood they live in, deserve to live in a city that gives them the services they need. A city where they are all safe, a city where they can thrive. By investing now and investing immediately in cities of all sizes around the country, Congress can keep people safe and prepare our country to recover from this plague. Thank you for your time and your care for cities across the country, Chairman. I appreciate the time to share our story.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me recognize Mayor Steve Benjamin of Columbia, South Carolina. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to some degree, I'm going to abbreviate my comments because our Vice President has done such a fantastic job, but also because I'm doing a little bit of preaching to the converted. We want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your constant work. I mean, you have been the most reliable voice for American cities in the Congress, and obviously your experience as a mayor has colored that and shaped it, and we're thankful for you. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to share some thoughts around COVID-19 and the impact it's had on our respective cities. Here in Columbia, we've seen the same challenges. We've seen a public health crisis extend into being a significant economic and fiscal crisis. We do want to thank you and all of your colleagues in Congress for the great bipartisan leadership you've shown by acting quickly and decisively, commensurate with the depths and severity of this pandemic. But obviously, we wouldn't be on this call if we didn't think we needed more and more targeted assistance. You've actually, in your opening comments, been very clear about where you stand, and we stand right beside you. And we're thankful for those opening thoughts. A few very quick thoughts. We are the capital city. I'm in an arm wrestling match with Charleston right now to still be the largest city in this state, but we are not a city of over 500,000 citizens. So obviously the leadership that you've shown and others like Representative Jonah Goose from Colorado, introducing the Coronavirus Community Relief Act that would send $250 billion in direct fiscal assistance to those of us who are smaller than 500,000. It's important that just as you referenced earlier, direct, flexible fiscal assistance to cities is so important. I think state and local spending makes up about 17% of GDP right now, and obviously with these incredible seismic shifts we've seen in population growth, cities and metro economies account for the vast majority, significant majority, over 90% of America's GDP right now. So if we make these investments thoughtfully, we're certainly going to be in better shape for posterity. In Columbia, we expect to have at least a $21.5 million shortfall this coming year in our budget, and this goes to the same issues that Mayor Whaley talked about, core issues that I think are the defining characteristic of a developed nation: police, fire, sanitation, and the like. So we need real money. We need direct assistance, and we would make that plea right now. Lastly, and you've been an incredible support of us on all issues regarding infrastructure and municipal finance, seeking the reinstatement of the tax exemption on advance refundings, and we thank you for that. You know that muni bonds are the bread and butter of infrastructure investment, and unfortunately, this crisis has frozen the bond market and driven up our borrowing costs as well. So we appreciate all that the Federal Reserve has done to use some of the Section 13.3 emergency loan authority provided by the CARES Act to purchase $500 billion in short-term municipal securities. for large cities and counties. And these are, again, are good first moves to address the crisis. However, we need to make sure that we have more tools beyond that and available to cities and other governmental agencies and political subdivisions smaller than that. Absent such action, I'm a bond lawyer by training. That's how I made my living before I made the foolish decision of running for mayor and losing my best client. That's a whole nother story. In the absence of action, I fear that this crisis is going to do significant long-term damage to the municipal bond market. So we want to continue to support your advocacy there. Obviously, Senator Menendez has a municipal bond emergency relief act that we fully support that will allow the Federal Reserve to buy muni debt to help state and local governments finance delivery of these key public services due to the coronavirus emergency. One last thought, obviously every $1 billion we spend on infrastructure creates about 15,000 construction jobs. So as you're looking for opportunities to recover post coronavirus, this is a real opportunity to make some great infrastructure investments in partnership with us. Thank you for all the work you've been doing for small businesses. It's important and crucial. We launched our own small effort here, put about $1.4 million on the street. 300 businesses benefited from that, helped them through the most difficult times they've ever seen. So we support what you're doing there, and really just want to make sure you know that as much support as you need to do the good work you continue to do, we're here rocking and rolling with you. The U.S. Council of Mayors appreciate you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working arm in arm with you and in the vanguard with you. God bless you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a quick note, I intend fully, I've had good conversations with Secretary Mnuchin about infrastructure and at the White House as well with the president about 1.5 years ago. And I'll speak a little bit more specifically to that at my concluding remarks, but I fully intend to include Build America bonds and private activity bonds in that final equation. I can assure you of that. So now let me introduce the mayor of Arlington, Texas, Jeff Williams. Mr. Mayor.
Chairman Neal, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. And my fellow mayors have covered some great topics. And let me just share with you that this pandemic, of course, is not a situation that's affecting red or blue cities. It is a red, white, and blue issue here. It is affecting all of America. And Arlington is a city of 400,000 people, the 46th largest city in America, bigger than Cincinnati, St. Louis, or New Orleans. And we are located right in the center of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And of course, we have Dallas on one side, Fort Worth on the other, and approximately 40 other cities surrounding of various sizes. So as you can see, the virus did not stop at city limit lines there of only cities of 500,000. It went across. But however, the cooperation of all of the cities and the county and the state and the federal government have been key for us. And we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel as far as the virus is concerned. But however, because of the economy, we are very worried, extremely worried, because we do not want to see the layoffs that already cities are experiencing. We have a 5-step plan in which we have implemented freezes there. We also have implemented cost reductions of between 10 and 25% in every one of our departments. And our last step is the layoffs. And frankly, we are working hard here because we are hopeful with the CARES Act that there will be money coming in to keep us from having to lay off some of our key personnel, which is our best asset. And in fact, right now, our city staffs are working overtime and doing incredible work to make a difference. As we all are, we're having to do more to be able to take care of it. And right now is a key time in which citizens are actually requiring more of our city services than at any other time, and especially our police and fire. And they have taken leadership roles here in our testing sites in directing the essential businesses and providing that real safety net there for them. But yet, all across the board, from our parks department to our street department, we've got personnel that are out and making a difference here in the lives of our people. And then It's very, very difficult to be talking about layoffs and furloughs in the midst of when we should be rewarding our staff and moving forward. In addition to that, it's very clear that through all of the plans that the local municipalities are the ones to implement and execute the plans that are coming forward from both the federal and state governments. And we're very appreciative of that. And we have benefited from it. And so here in our community, we are the leader in tourism in North Texas. And we are having no tourism, needless to say. It is down to nothing. In addition to that, we're also experiencing no shopping, needless to say, which again is a huge sales tax revenue for us. And then we also are home to the largest university in the University of Texas system, the University of Texas at Arlington, and they're open with no students. And of course, those students have a major economic impact, but then more importantly, our small businesses have been shut down, and they are just non-existent. And we all know that they are the backbone of any city, and they're the backbone of this country. And so consequently, our revenue loss is tremendous. And then that revenue loss, without a doubt, is due to the coronavirus. In our community, we were enjoying the most economic prosperity that we had ever experienced before all of this hit. And then now it's exactly opposite. And people are without jobs and looking to be able to come back. And yet we don't want to be putting municipal employees on the street also contributing to that job loss there. We also want to be a help in the recovery. And so being able to have funds that help us to recover quickly here from this economy there that actually supplement this revenue loss that we've had, which is a direct result of the coronavirus, is real critical. And of course, in the original CARES Act, we've seen the flexibility for airports and how they use it there, and actually being able to use it for revenue loss. We've seen the same thing for the transit agencies and the ability for them to be able to use it for revenue loss. And even our cities of 500,000 or more that have received it there can't use it for revenue loss, so they are crippled there too. So consequently, regardless of the population there with it, the ability for us to have funds that could be used for this revenue loss are critical to us, because absent from this support, local governments will be forced there to cut services even deeper, and staff, of course, also being cut. And that's happening right now. So the sooner we get through and I want to speak to that. And I know, and by the way, Congress has acted so quickly, and we're so appreciative of what's happened. And we are hoping for the same thing as you move forward there, and very appreciative of that. But of course, absent from this direct and flexible assistance in the local governments, this crisis could really deepen. And of course, here we have critical infrastructure investments that we already are committed to, but yet that also is going to be another cut versus infrastructure. We believe, I think Mayor Benjamin was so right on because we believe that infrastructure is an opportunity to put more people to work and have something to show that will really help us build this economy, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And as one of the few engineers that is a mayor in America, I want to tell you that we've seen it work throughout the years of how infrastructure has helped this economy. And of course, I want to reiterate what Mayor Benjamin said too, and what you're doing in the municipal bond market there, and then even more so in what we can do there in the municipal bond market. Of course, we are very worried. We currently have a AAA bond rating, but it is at risk right now, needless to say. And of course, all of our cities being downgraded from where we're at is also another concern. And this flexible funding is a real key for us to be able to maintain our bond ratings and not cost more to be able to work on and repair our infrastructure and rebuild our infrastructure, which is so critical. So with that, we could talk on plenty more, but I am going to stop and defer to my fellow mayors here. But know that the mayors are together, and we very quickly here in Texas put together a letter. They're asking for your assistance with 111 mayors that we assembled literally in 48 hours that contains all of the 15 largest cities here in Texas, but it also includes some of the smallest cities in Texas there because it doesn't matter about whether it's Texas or not. It's throughout America that we're being affected right now. And Chairman Neal, thank you for your leadership. And we certainly know that you understand. And I've definitely got a shout out to also to Congressman Marchant, former mayor of Carrollton, Texas, right here.
And a good guy.
He's done remarkable work. As a matter of fact, he's the only mayor in Texas that has a better employee to ratio of citizens than me here in Texas. He did a great job there, and
Good guy.
very much appreciate him. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I intend to ensure that there will be flexibility for you if we can get this assistance from the federal government to the city halls and state houses across the country. And I appreciated your reference to the idea of, in this atmosphere with the decline of retailing and the decline of economic activity, that directly impacts what is a lifeline for mayors across the country, the growth taxes. And that's part of the real challenge that we confront. So now I'm going to call on Mayor Bill Peduto from Pittsburgh. And you should know that Congressman Doyle is one of my best friends, as was Congressman Coyne. And I always have felt that in talking to them, that I knew the first names of everybody on the Steelers, the Penguins, and the Pirates. So, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so very much. We're blessed to have Congressman Doyle as our representative, and he's been in touch with our office constantly on this. First off, thank you. Thank you for not only putting this together, but for understanding the seriousness of this issue. A lot of times it seems like Washington forgets where different things get implemented. And it's happening right now in cities throughout this country. We're working on an hourly basis in order to be able to not only protect and serve the people of our cities, but to help the most vulnerable and those that are getting caught in the social safety net and falling through. One different point I want to make to you, and I won't take much time. Pittsburgh has gone through this. So we saw what economic collapse looks like firsthand when the steel industry died in the 1980s and the 1990s. And we faced unemployment greater than during the Great Depression. We lost more people than New Orleans lost after Katrina, and they never came home. Our deficit within our budget exceeded New York's when they went bankrupt. But we didn't have a program. And so it took 30 years for us to dig out of that hole. And during that process, we went through bankruptcy. We went through state oversight for 14 years. And we're still paying that price of crumbling infrastructure and disinvestment in critical needs of the city. But something else happened during that time too. Our economy shifted and it changed. It was because of investments that were being made and partnerships that were being created between federal government and local and state government, in corporate and foundations and nonprofits. And unlike a lot of our neighbors, that swath of America, and you take it down from Birmingham up to Buffalo, Appalachia, they're not seeing that same part of a new economy that we're seeing. And if we don't invest in those areas, and there are no cities over 500,000, we're talking about places like Chattanooga and Asheville, places that need to be able to see a continuation of investment that has changed their economy so that their neighbors in surrounding counties can continue to see it as well. If we don't invest in those areas, it is putting the final nail in the coffin. It is saying to the area of America that built America and has still been left behind in this new economy, that we just don't have the capacity to help you. This in stress is always like this. Whenever anything is under stress, areas that are vulnerable will break. And there is a large part of this country that is under that. If you extend that out through the Rust Belt and you look at places like Cleveland that has been transformed through Cleveland Clinic, or Louisville through the University of Louisville, you'll start to see where the new economy is beginning to emerge in those parts of the post-industrial Midwest. But without this help, you are going to see cities in financial disrepair that will not be able to continue the economic transformation that will be necessary. In other words, the disinvestment from Washington will come at a cost, not simply to our firefighters, police, and other uniformed workers, not only to the services we provide to the people that live in our cities, but to the economies of our regions in the region of America that built America. I ask you to use that and have any member of Congress call if they question what is in it for Kentucky, what is in it for Tennessee, what is in it for Alabama, what is in it for Michigan. What is in it is the ability to be able to get through a time when the water is rough, when we need a helping hand to get over the next few years in order to be able to see our regions become a part of a growing new economy in this country.
Well, I appreciate your commentary as it relates to the role of healthcare spending. It's easy for people to forget that most of our hospitals across the country, particularly those in urban areas, as you know, half their revenue now likely comes from Medicare. And then with Medicaid, you're generally, as a rule of thumb, looking at another 10 to 15%, in some cases higher for the disproportionate share hospitals. So I think that revenue stream that you're going to see after conversations we had with Secretary Azar, he indicated that, and Pittsburgh's a great example because I'm mindful of what you did in the transformation with healthcare and the centers of excellence. But I also think that we were under such pressure to get the money out rapidly. We used the first pipeline of Medicare expenditure. And then quickly, the next tranche of the $30 billion is going to be Medicaid expenditure. Most of your hospitals should know this week in the disproportionate share arena what they're going to receive. And on top of that, Congress appropriated another $75 billion last week for our hospitals. Not knowing the specifics of your communities, I would venture to guess that your hospitals are now likely your biggest employers as well. And I also think that as part of this, $25 billion more for testing to provide people with the necessary confidence to go back to the workplace. I think Governor Baker has indicated that on a staggered basis, we will return here in Massachusetts. But the other part of this that I hope that you'll undertake is members of a pretty important part of the American story as mayors. I think that there are a lot of different reasons for discussing what's happened with income inequality. But I think if we could just lower our voices and talk about how best to solve it, because the statistical data is very clear. And at the same time, you can see where community colleges, you can see where more vocational education, more mentorships and those sorts of initiatives, they can certainly help mainstream people for the new economy. And I also think that innovation and creativity is really found in urban areas. And I hope that going forward, we could have this conversation with men and women of goodwill. I think that's what's really important as well, because we're reminded in this atmosphere just how dependent we all are on each other. And with that, let me call upon Mayor Alan Weber of Santa Fe, where I've been a number of times, and a beautiful city as well. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you, and thank you for putting this together. I'm glad you've been to Santa Fe. I am a graduate of Amherst College, so I've been to Springfield, but it was a long time ago, and I'm sure Springfield's changed as much as my hairline has changed, but good to see you, and greetings to Western Mass from an alum. I thought I'd give you some more data to work with and another perspective to add to the context of this crisis we're finding ourselves in. Here in New Mexico and in Santa Fe, like all my fellow mayors, our first priority has been to come to terms with the public health emergency and to do whatever needs to be done to safeguard the well-being and health of our residents. And we've had phenomenal leadership from our governor, great alignment up and down New Mexico. And I'm very blessed to be able to say to you that at the moment, Santa Fe has suffered 0 deaths from COVID-19. And to me, that's the biggest number that matters. Everything else is subsidiary to that. So we appreciate all the help that's come from Washington to take on the first order of business, which is to save lives. But now we're coming with the next order of business, which is dealing with the economic aftershock and the absolute free fall that we find ourselves in. Santa Fe, you know from having been here, is a community. It is a state capital, like some of my other colleagues on the call, the oldest in the country and one of the smallest. We're by population 85,000 people, but great history, great culture, 16 generations of Santa Feans and Northern New Mexicans are proud of their heritage. And we are largely a tourism economy and proud of that. We're about the #3 art market in the country, despite our small size. Indian market, the oldest Indian market in the country, about to celebrate, or would have been about to celebrate, its 99th anniversary. Spanish market, folk art market, phenomenal opera, and beginnings, as Mayor Peduto mentioned, of diversification of our economy into technology, the digital entertainment business, all of which has now been shut down. We, unlike the 07-08 Great Recession, we fell off a cliff. And we went from 90% occupancy in our hotels, restaurants, getting ready for a record summer, to absolute free fall as far as our economy is concerned. Santa Fe's city budget is 70% derived from what you would call a sales tax. We call a gross receipts tax, which means that when people go out and participate in our tourism events, the city benefits. We went from outperforming our revenue expectations and being below our expenditure expectations to having virtually no data about how bad our deficit really is. Our estimate right now is we have a $46 million deficit in all of our funds collected that we have to solve between now and the end of June. And then we start fiscal year 21, again, probably a situation that's worse because there'll be no revenue from any of our summer fiestas, festivals, and markets. So we have a $46 million all fund deficit to fix in the next 2 months. We implemented, like my colleagues, a hiring freeze, shutting off the valve for many opportunities for people to come serve their community for no reason, for no fault of their own. That tap got turned off first. Next, we implemented a spending freeze. That means that $25 million that would have gone from the city of Santa Fe into merchants, vendors, contracts have all been turned off. We're in effect doing the wrong thing from what the public sector ought to be doing, which is helping to supplant the private sector economy. We've been forced to take $25 million off the table from our relationships with our local vendors, merchants, and contract agents. We closed down overtime, comp time, everything you're familiar with as a mayor, a former mayor. You know where those levers are. And finally, we got to the hardest one of all, because it's not just a math problem, it's a human problem. It deals with people's lives. It deals with the level of service we provide. It deals with the employees who are our most important asset as a government. At the moment, we are voting tonight as a governing body on a 4-hour furlough for more than 1,000 of our employees and a 16-hour furlough for 181 of our employees. And even if we implement those furloughs, we will still have a $16 million gap in our budget deficit that we have to find funds from some other source to fill that hole. We're leaving public safety alone because that's our first priority, as all mayors agree. But as we look at fiscal year 21, the uncertainty is very significant. We don't really know how far down this hole will be, nor do we know when the recovery will start or at what rate it will come, nor do we know whether there'll be a second wave of this coronavirus, which many of our public health experts are warning us about. So we're dealing with a great deal of uncertainty other than the need to find $46 million in 2 months. You know the drill, Mr. Chairman. It means teen centers don't get opened and run. It means libraries are closed. It means access to our schools are closed. It means museums are closed. Swimming pools are closed. Rec centers are closed. And we are doing this in the name of public health and safety, which is still our first priority. Continuing that string of zeros under death from coronavirus is our highest priority, but we have to continue to operate at the local level, providing services and employing people who are our residents. Time is of the essence. I expect we will be on our own for the next 2 months to solve this problem, but fiscal year 21 is coming up fast. So your urgent attention to this and your commitment to helping cities is all the more critical. And it's a financial problem, but I want to come back to the human cost, because we're seeing, like many other cities, spikes in domestic violence calls, increase issues of mental health, behavioral health. We worry about the mental health of our young people who don't know whether they're going to be able to go to college in the fall, or whether they'll graduate under what terms and conditions from high school. So I guess I'll leave you with this thought, because you've got a great history of being a mayor yourself in Western Mass. You've got a really good sampling of mayors from around the country of different sizes and financial conditions. The truth is that all cities are different and all cities are the same. And what makes us the same is what you started us with this morning, which is we are on the front lines of taking care of people's lives. The services we talk about are really a way of describing how we touch people and how we make a difference to their quality of life, their sense of security and well-being. And right now, in the short term for Santa Fe, that's security and well-being, the equity you mentioned, the sense of closing the gap between people who are really doing well and people who are struggling to make ends meet. All of that is at risk right now. And so we are asking for your help. We're not a city of 500,000 by a long shot. We do punch above our weight when it comes to many of our attributes, but we need your help, sir. And we're ready to help you help us. We want to make the case that cities going back to revenue sharing, great model. I'm old enough to remember that. We could really benefit from that. And we want to be able to tell the people of Santa Fe that help is on the way, that Washington, D.C. hears us, and that you as our champion are fighting with us, for us, and we're ready to help you do what needs to be done to close our financial gap on the way of closing the emotional and personal gaps that are opening up all over cities in America. So many thanks to you. We'll see you back here in Santa Fe when things open up. And maybe if I get back to my Amherst College reunion, we can connect in Springfield.
Well, you should know the chief of the tax staff, Andrew Grossman, for me is an Amherst College grad, and he's an advocate for cities. I can assure you of that. I also would say that you should know I'm in favor of eliminating that 500,000 person cap. I don't think that makes any sense. I think that, again, using the pipeline of CDBG or something along those lines of direct revenue to you, you know the problems, they're unique to your communities, and you need some flexibility. So let me raise this with you. When I talked to Secretary Mnuchin today, we're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about unemployment insurance, and we're going to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. But it would help if I were to say to him, this is something that mayors of the cities that I spoke with this morning asked me to raise with you. Is there one thing that you could suggest to me that I should raise with him on your behalf?
Well, I think the major point that the revenue loss is a direct result of the coronavirus, and then it definitely can be limited to that. And that's been documented that they're worried about us using the money for other things, but this revenue loss is easy to document, and it doesn't have to be used for pensions or other things. I think we can definitely be able to have it limited to the revenue loss, and it's easy for cities to document. And I just want to thank you for looking at the CDBG pipeline. I think it's set up, it's worked, and I think it's a great way to get the money out.
That's what we use with the Social Security recipients, and that's what we use for the IRS stimulus checks. So we would really call this the stage of stability and relief, but we were able to get the money to people fast because if you had a taxpayer ID, or if you were a Social Security recipient, that's where the money could travel quickly. And that's why we did it the way that we did it.
Right. We
The
appreciate,
others,
Chairman, the $250 billion that we're asking for, the work that you are doing for CDBG to use that as the pipeline for us. And as Mayor Williams said, this is about straight revenue loss. And I think everyone needs to understand that we are talking about the frontline workers that are providing the service that is so key during this crisis and the crisis we've had in the past. We're not talking about fancy things. We are talking about the direct services that are provided on the front lines in our communities. And when you think of a city like Dayton that probably had one of the top 5 worst Great Recessions periods because of the job loss, for us to go through a factor of 2 after we've never even recovered from that job number, there is nothing fancy about this. And I think that's the really important message that they need to hear. We are talking about those frontline workers.
One other issue, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure if it's for the Secretary and as much as it's for Congress as well, is the ability to get local government paid leave reimbursement. There's obviously everyone's allowed to under the Families First Act, but only private employers will get the benefit of the tax credit. Obviously, we need to have the ability for our citizens, our employees rather, to take advantage of sick leave, but receiving a tax credit to offset those costs could be incredibly crucial to cities facing the common challenges we're all facing right now. So parity there would be important.
Yeah, entirely reasonable.
Congressman, I'd say you hit the key word, which is flexibility, local ability to use the funds to speak to our local needs. And since you talked earlier about bond ratings and the role that plays, and Mayor Williams raised it, it's on our minds as well. We really need the help in order to maintain our bond rating, our ability to borrow in the future. If we don't get some assistance, we not only will face a cut in services now, but the cost of money goes up in the future. It's a double hit. So the faster and more quickly we could get flexible assistance to maintain our fiscal integrity as a partner with the federal government, I think it benefits everybody, including the rebuilding of the American economy. I think this economy, as in general, will rebound from the grassroots up. It's going to be seeing the cities reopen and begin to do business again that will be the signs of life and hope and energy that people all over the country will respond to positively. That's a positive upward spiral that's fed by you and your colleagues recognizing the urgent need we have, and then trusting us to invest that money in a series of in local investments that grow nationally to demonstrate the rebuilding and reopening of the national economy. And in that regard, we are definitely all in it together with the Secretary of the Treasury and the Fed. And it has to be a complete system that works together in a way to rebuild and reassert the strength of our national economy.
Yeah, I would just add that on a pragmatic standpoint, there will not be an economic recovery if our states and our cities are bankrupt. Plain and simple.
Well, I actually think the Fed has done a good job in terms of preparing for buying municipal debt. I think that'll provide some stability. And I think that that's a very important consideration. The Fed, as you know, the critics, I'm not one of them. I think that we've worked on this hand in glove. I think that Jay Powell has really moved expeditiously in that area, largely because he understands the role that debt plays, not just in the municipal debt market, but across the board. And the conversations we've had have been very encouraging. So let me maybe finish. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but I'm also going to need your help as we go forward on infrastructure. Now, Secretary Mnuchin, as I noted in that conversation a week ago, he indicated to me, if I was to get USMCA done, we have breakfast once a month. And he said, if you can get USMCA done, as he told me in December, he said, I guarantee you we'll go to infrastructure. So I closed the conversation with him a week ago. And before I could close it, he volunteered it. He said, I'm telling you, we're still in on infrastructure. So highways, roadways, bridges, airports, and broadband, sewer and water and rail. I think that these are all part of the White House initiatives and suggestions that they've offered. I take them at their word on this. It's been a long time since we've had a major infusion of investment in the nation's infrastructure. If I could just say this to you, again, based on long experience in the House, that when we talk about what's happened in terms of the polarization, you experience that largely because you're in jobs where it's just get it done and get it done the right way. And it used to be in Congress the easiest thing to do. Members on both sides were swept up in the investment initiatives, and Republicans and Democrats aligned themselves on the need for investment in infrastructure. And you've all seen what's happened everywhere as we've now avoided the requirement of the big investment. So the president's comments a couple of weeks ago were welcome when he said that interest rates are near zero and we should take full advantage of it. And I intend to prod the administration to do precisely that. And I want to thank you all for doing what you do every single day. There are some hilarious stories that if I'm ever at a U.S. Conference of Mayors, that we should just spend an hour talking about the more unusual stories we've had in the mayor's office.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as you all know, you can't make it up. Some of the people you get to meet, some of the things that people say to you, it's pretty wild. And at a time when humor is in short supply, you've all got some great stories because I know that I do. But thank you all very much. And thanks to Tom Cochran for his usual good performance.
Chairman, just in closing, I sure want to support you there in your infrastructure initiative. U.S. Conference of Mayors has had many meetings with Chairman DeFazio. And then now I do think in Congress that we are seeing Republicans, congressmen too, that are starting to see the need for infrastructure. And so we will work hard to support you and to gather more support for infrastructure. And as you mentioned, it just seems to be a no-brainer to help this economy, and we'll be there for you.
Yes, for sure. Chairman, it's one of our 3 I's under President Benjamin. One of the I's was infrastructure. So innovation, infrastructure, and inclusion. So we are obsessed with it as well. We will be there in that. And we look forward to the day we can get together and then we will share stories with each other about what we have to say about mayors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
Appreciate
All the
your
best.
leadership.
All the
Take
best.
care. Stay healthy.
You too.